The dust kicked up behind Garrett Walker's horse as he rode through the Nevada desert in late September of 1878, searching for shade in a landscape that seemed determined to deny him any comfort. The sun beat down mercilessly on his shoulders, and his canteen had run dry 3 miles back, making every breath feel like inhaling fire. He had been riding for 2 days straight from a failed cattle drive near Carson City, heading toward Las Vegas with nothing but $15 in his pocket, and a growing sense that life had dealt him a losing hand. Just when he thought he might have to make camp under the brutal sun, he spotted a lone cottonwood tree in the distance, its green leaves promising relief. As he drew closer, squinting against the bright light, he realized someone was sitting beneath it. His hand instinctively moved toward his revolver, a habit formed from too many years living rough. But as his mare carried him nearer, he saw it was a woman in a dusty blue dress, her dark hair tied back with a faded ribbon. She looked up as he approached, and even from 30 feet away, he could see she was exhausted. Her face was sunburned, her lips cracked, and her dress was torn at the hem. She did not stand or run, just watched him with eyes that held something between hope and resignation. Garrett dismounted slowly, keeping his movements easy and unthreatening. "Madam," he said, tipping his hat, "you all right out here?" She studied him for a long moment, taking in his weathered face, his honest eyes, the way he kept his distance respectfully. Then she smiled, just a little, and said words that would echo in his mind for the rest of his life. "I knew someone good would come." He felt something shift in his chest at those words, though he could not have explained what or why. "You been waiting long?" he asked, moving closer but still maintaining a proper distance. 3 days, she said, her voice hoarse. "Maybe 4. Time gets strange out here." Garrett's eyes widened. 3 days, you got water, food?" She shook her head. "Had some. It ran out yesterday." Without another word, he grabbed his canteen from his saddle, remembering there was still a swallow or 2 left, and brought it to her. "Here, take it slow." She accepted it with trembling hands, and he noticed how delicate her fingers were despite the dirt under her nails. As she drank, he studied her more carefully. She was young, probably around 23 or 24, with a face that would have been beautiful if not for the exhaustion and sunburn. But it was her eyes that caught him, brown and deep and full of an intelligence that suggested she had stories worth hearing. "My name is Garrett Walker," he said. "I am heading toward Las Vegas. It is about 15 miles south of here. If you do not mind riding double, I can take you there." "Zelda Armstrong," she replied, handing back the empty canteen. "And I would be grateful, more grateful than you know." He helped her to her feet, and she swayed slightly, her legs weak from sitting so long. Instinctively, he steadied her with a hand on her elbow, feeling the heat radiating from her sunburned skin through the thin fabric of her dress. "When did you last eat?" he asked. "Yesterday morning. I had half a biscuit left." Garrett cursed under his breath. He had some jerky in his saddlebag, tough as leather and twice as salty, but it was food. He retrieved it and offered it to her. "It ain't much, but it will keep you going." She took it without hesitation, tearing into it with an hunger that told him she had been downplaying how desperate her situation was. While she ate, he checked his horse, making sure the mare could handle the extra weight in this heat. The horse was tired but strong, a good-natured animal he had won in a card game 6 months prior. "Can you tell me what happened?" he asked gently. "How you came to be out here alone?" Zelda swallowed hard, and he saw her eyes fill with tears she was too proud to let fall. "I was traveling with my uncle from California. He was taking me to meet a family in Santa Fe, said they needed a governess for their children. We got separated during a dust storm 2 weeks back. I thought I was heading toward the road, but I just got more lost." Then our horse threw me and ran off, and I have been walking ever since until I could not walk any more. Your uncle did not come looking for you." She looked away. "My uncle was not a good man. I think he might have been relieved to be rid of me." The bitterness in her voice told Garrett there was more to that story, but he did not press. "Well, you are safe now. I give you my word on that." She met his eyes, searching for something, and whatever she found there seemed to satisfy her because she nodded. "I believe you." They mounted his horse together, Zelda sitting in front of him so he could keep the reins and make sure she did not fall if she fainted. The closeness was improper by any standard, but necessity overruled propriety in the desert. As they began the slow journey toward Las Vegas, Garrett found himself very aware of her presence, the way she fit against him, the scent of her hair despite the dust and sweat. "You said you knew someone good would come," he said after they had been riding for an hour. "What made you so sure?" She was quiet for so long he thought she might have fallen asleep. Then she spoke, her voice soft. "I did not know, not really, but I had to believe it. Because if I believed no one would come, I would have given up, and I did not want to die under that tree." The simple honesty of it struck him hard. "I am glad I came that way then. I almost took the eastern route." "What made you choose west?" "Saw a hawk flying that direction this morning. Seemed like as good a reason as any." She laughed, a dry, raspy sound, but genuine. "So a hawk saved my life." "I suppose it did." They rode in comfortable silence after that, both lost in their thoughts. Garrett could not stop thinking about what might have happened if he had chosen differently, if he had ignored that hawk, if he had been an hour later. The thought of this woman dying alone in the desert made something in him ache. Las Vegas appeared as the sun was beginning its descent. A small town of adobe buildings and wooden structures clustered around a central plaza. It was not much to look at, but after the empty desert, it looked like paradise. Garrett headed straight for the town well and helped Zelda down, letting her drink her fill of cool water while he watered his horse. People were watching them with curiosity and some suspicion. A dusty cowboy riding in with an equally dusty woman was not unusual in itself, but there was something about their appearance that drew attention. Garrett ignored the stares and focused on Zelda, who was looking more alert now that she had water. "There is a boarding house on the east side of town," he said. "Run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson. She is decent and fair. I can pay for a room for you for a few nights, give you time to figure out what you want to do next." Zelda looked at him with surprise. "You would do that? You do not even know me. You need help and I can provide it. That is all that matters." She touched his arm lightly, her fingers gentle. "Thank you, Garrett. I will pay you back somehow. No need for that. Just get yourself well again." But even as he said it, he realized he did not want to just leave her at the boarding house and ride on. The thought of not seeing her again created an unexpected hollow feeling in his chest. He told himself it was just concern for someone he had helped, nothing more, but he knew he was lying to himself. Mrs. Patterson was a round woman in her 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She looked Zelda over with a critical but not unkind gaze, then quoted a price that was fair. Garrett paid for 3 nights, ignoring Zelda's protests. "You need a bath and proper food," Mrs. Patterson declared. "Come with me, dear. I will set you up." Zelda followed but glanced back at Garrett, her eyes holding a question. "Will you be around tomorrow?" "I will be in town for a few days," he said, surprising himself with the decision. "Need to resupply and let my horse rest." She smiled, and it transformed her whole face despite the sunburn and exhaustion. "Good. I would like to talk more if you do not mind." "I would like that too." He watched her disappear into the boarding house, then led his horse to the stable, his mind spinning. He had not planned to stay in Las Vegas more than a night, just long enough to get supplies before heading to Arizona, where he had heard there was work on a ranch near Prescott. But now those plans felt suddenly less important. The stable master, an old Mexican man named Diego, greeted him warmly and showed him where to settle his mare. As Garrett brushed her down, Diego made conversation. "That woman you brought in, she is lucky you found her. Desert does not forgive. She is tough. Survived 3 days out there alone. Still without water another day and—" Diego shrugged expressively. Garrett did not want to think about that. He finished with his horse and paid Diego for a week's boarding. Another impulsive decision that confirmed he was planning to stay longer than he had told himself. He found a cheap room above the saloon, barely large enough for a bed and a washstand, but it was clean and the price was right. After washing off the worst of the trail dust and changing into a shirt that was only slightly less worn than the one he had been wearing, he headed downstairs to the saloon for dinner. The place was half full, mostly locals with a few obvious travelers scattered among them. Garrett ordered steak and beans and a beer, sitting at a corner table where he could watch the room. Old habits from too many years spent in rough places where keeping your back to the wall could save your life. As he ate, his thoughts kept drifting to Zelda. There was something about her that drew him, and it was not just her looks, though she was certainly pretty beneath the sunburn and exhaustion. It was her spirit, the way she had sat under that tree believing someone would come, the quiet strength in her voice when she talked about not wanting to die. She had been through something hard, he could tell, and come out the other side still believing in goodness. That took a kind of courage he admired. He was finishing his beer when a man sat down across from him, uninvited. He was well dressed by local standards, with a vest and a watch chain, and his clean-shaven face wore an expression of practiced friendliness that Garrett instinctively distrusted. "Evening," the man said. "Name is Walter Thompson. I own the general store here in town. Garrett Walker. I could not help but notice you rode in with a young lady this afternoon. She looked in pretty rough shape." Garrett's eyes narrowed slightly. "Found her in the desert. Brought her to safety. That is all." "Oh, I am not suggesting anything improper," Thompson said quickly, holding up his hands. "Just curious about her story. We do not get many single women passing through, especially not in such circumstances. Her story is hers to tell, not mine." Thompson leaned back, reassessing him. "Fair enough. Just looking out for the town, you understand. We have had some trouble lately with drifters and such. I am not trouble, and neither is she. Just a man who helps someone in need. Noble of you." Thompson stood, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Enjoy your stay in Las Vegas, Mr. Walker." After he left, Garrett sat for a while, thinking. There was something about Thompson he did not like, though he could not put his finger on what exactly. The man seemed too interested in Zelda for someone who claimed to just be looking out for the town. The next morning, Garrett woke early and spent time checking his gear and making a list of supplies he needed. But his mind was not really on the task. He kept thinking about Zelda, wondering if she had slept well, if she was feeling better. Around mid-morning, unable to resist any longer, he made his way to the boarding house. Mrs. Patterson answered his knock with a knowing look. "She is out back in the garden, having tea. You can go on through." He found Zelda sitting on a wooden bench under a trellis covered in dried vines, a cup of tea in her hands. She had bathed and changed into a simple green dress that Mrs. Patterson must have loaned her, and her hair was clean and loose around her shoulders. The sunburn was still visible on her face, but she looked 1,000 times better than she had yesterday. She looked up as he approached and smiled, that same transformative smile that made something warm bloom in his chest. "Garrett, I was hoping you would come by. How are you feeling?" he asked, sitting on the bench beside her, careful to maintain a respectable distance. "Like I might actually survive," she said with a small laugh. "Mrs. Patterson has been wonderful. She fed me more food last night than I have eaten in a week, and the bath." She closed her eyes briefly, remembering. "I did not think I would ever feel clean again." "I am glad," he said simply. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and Garrett found himself studying her profile, the curve of her cheek, the way the morning light caught in her hair. She was beautiful, he realized, truly beautiful, and it had nothing to do with her features and everything to do with something that shone from within her. "I need to tell you the truth," Zelda said suddenly, turning to face him. "About my uncle and why I was really out there. You do not owe me explanations. I want to tell you. You saved my life, and you deserve to know who you saved." Garrett waited, giving her space to speak at her own pace. "My uncle was not taking me to be a governess," she began, her voice steady but quiet. "He was taking me to Santa Fe to sell me. There is a man there who runs a brothel, and my uncle had already accepted payment to deliver me." Anger flared hot in Garrett's chest, but he kept his voice calm. "Your own uncle. My father died 2 years ago. My mother was already gone. My uncle was the only family I had left, or so I thought. He took me in, but he saw me as a burden when this man from Santa Fe made the offer." She swallowed hard. "I did not know at first. My uncle told me the governess story, and I believed him. But I overheard him talking to someone at a way station, heard the truth. That night, during the dust storm, I ran. I would rather have died in the desert than ended up in that place." Garrett felt something fierce and protective rise up in him. "You were right to run. And your uncle, if he comes looking." "He will not," she said with certainty. "He got his money. As far as he is concerned, whether I died in the desert or made it to Santa Fe, it is not his problem anymore." "Then he is not just a bad man, he is a fool. Anyone who would treat you that way." She looked at him with eyes that suddenly shimmered with tears. "You barely know me. How can you speak of me like that? I know you sat under that tree for 3 days believing someone good would come. I know you survived when most would not have. I know you would rather risk death than lose yourself. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." A tear slipped down her cheek, and without thinking, Garrett reached out and gently brushed it away with his thumb. The touch was electric, sending a jolt through him that he felt down to his bones. Zelda's breath caught, and for a moment they just looked at each other, something unspoken passing between them. Mrs. Patterson's voice calling from the house broke the spell. "Miss Zelda, would you like more tea?" Zelda stood quickly, smoothing her dress. "I should go help her with lunch. She has been so kind and I want to be useful." "Can I see you again?" Garrett asked, also standing. "Maybe tomorrow. I would like that. Maybe you could show me the town. I have only seen this house and the well." "It would be my pleasure." As he walked back toward the center of town, Garrett's mind was reeling. He had known this woman for less than 24 hours, but something about her had gotten under his skin in a way no one ever had before. He thought about her story, about her courage, about the way she had looked at him in the garden. And he thought about the fact that she had nowhere to go, no family, no prospects. The protective feeling that surged through him was powerful and a little frightening in its intensity. He barely knew her, he reminded himself. But his heart did not seem to care about logic or reason. It had already made up its mind. He spent the afternoon buying supplies and trying not to think about Zelda, which meant he thought about her constantly. Everything he saw made him wonder what she would think of it, if she had ever seen something similar, if it would make her smile. He was in serious trouble, and he knew it. That evening, he was having dinner in the saloon again when Walter Thompson approached him once more. This time, the store owner's expression was more serious, less friendly. "Mr. Walker, I have been asking around about you," Thompson said without preamble. That's so. You are a drifter, a cowboy who goes from job to job. No permanent home, no real prospects. That about right? Garrett's jaw tightened. I work honest, I pay my debts. What I do is my own business. Normally, I would agree. But when it comes to that young lady you brought to town, I think it becomes the town's business. She is vulnerable and I would hate to see her taken advantage of. I would never. I am sure you believe that, Thompson interrupted. But facts are facts. She has nothing and you are showing interest. People notice these things. I just want to make sure your intentions are honorable. Garrett stood slowly, his considerable height making Thompson take an involuntary step back. My intentions toward Miss Armstrong are completely honorable, not that I need to explain myself to you. But since you seem so concerned about vulnerable women, maybe you should be asking what you and this town plan to do to help her, instead of questioning the man who saved her life. Thompson's face reddened. Now see here. No, you see here. That woman survived hell and came out the other side. She deserves respect and help, not gossip and suspicion. If you got a problem with me, we can settle it, but leave her out of it. An older man from a nearby table stood up, and Garrett recognized the town sheriff from the star on his vest. Everything all right here, gentlemen? Just a misunderstanding, Thompson said quickly. I was leaving. After he left, the sheriff looked Garrett over with shrewd eyes. You are the one who brought the girl in from the desert? Yes, sir. Name is Frank Morrison. I have been sheriff here for 10 years. Mind if I join you? Garrett gestured to the empty chair and Morrison sat down with a sigh. He was in his 50s, with gray hair and weathered features that spoke of a hard life honestly lived. Thompson means well, but he is a busybody, Morrison said. Thinks running the general store makes him mayor and moral guardian combined. Do not let him get to you. I do not like people making assumptions about Miss Armstrong. She has been through enough. I heard some of her story from Mrs. Patterson. Rough situation. Good thing you came along when you did. Morrison studied him. You planning to stick around? I was thinking about it, Garrett admitted. Though I need to find work if I do. Can you handle cattle? Been doing it most of my life. There is a ranch about 10 miles north of here, owned by a man named George Winters. Good man, fair employer. He was in town yesterday saying he needed to hire some hands for the winter. Might be worth riding out there. Garrett felt a surge of hope. I appreciate the information. Morrison stood to leave, then paused. That girl, Zelda. She seems like good people, and you seem decent enough. Do not let Thompson or anyone else make you feel like you got to justify yourself. Sometimes life puts people in each other's paths for a reason. That night, lying in his narrow bed above the saloon, Garrett thought about the sheriff's words. He thought about fate and chance and hawks flying west. He thought about Zelda's eyes and her smile and the way his heart had skipped when she said she wanted to see him again. He had never been a man who believed much in destiny or romance. Life had been too hard for such luxuries. But maybe, just maybe, there was something to it after all. The next morning, he rode out to the Winters ranch. George Winters was a solid man in his 40s, built like a bull, with a forthright manner that Garrett appreciated. They talked for an hour about experience and expectations, and by the end of it, Garrett had a job starting the following week, with decent pay and a bunk in the ranch's housing. When he rode back to Las Vegas, he felt lighter than he had in years. He had a job, a reason to stay, a future that suddenly looked brighter than it had in a long time. And at the center of it all was a woman with dark hair and eyes that had seen hard things but still believed in goodness. He found Zelda in the town plaza, sitting on a bench and watching children play. She looked peaceful, her face tilted toward the sun, and he took a moment to just watch her before she noticed him. When she did, her whole face lit up, and he felt that now familiar warmth in his chest. "Garrett," she said, standing, "I was starting to think you forgot about our walk. I had something to take care of, but I am here now, ready to see Las Vegas in all its glory." She laughed and took his offered arm, and they began walking through the small town. There was not much to see, honestly. The general store, the saloon, a small church, a few other businesses. But Garrett found he did not care about the sights. He just wanted to be near her, to hear her voice, to see her smile. As they walked, they talked. Really talked, in a way Garrett had not talked to anyone in years. She told him about her childhood in California, about her mother who had taught her to read and write, about her father who had been a teacher before illness took him. He told her about growing up in Kansas, about learning to ride before he could properly walk, about the years of drifting after his parents died. "Do you ever get tired of it?" she asked as they sat on the edge of the town plaza, watching the sun sink lower. "The drifting, I mean." "Never having a place to call home. Every day," he admitted, "but I never saw a way out of it, never had a reason to stop moving. And now," he looked at her, at the way the golden light made her hair shine, at the hope and something more in her eyes. "Now I might be finding one." She reached out and took his hand, a bold gesture that would have scandalized Mrs. Patterson if she had seen it. But they were alone at the edge of town, and the touch felt right, like something that was meant to be. "I have been thinking," Zelda said softly, "about what I want to do, where I want to go. I do not have much in the way of options. I have no money, no family, no prospects for employment in a town this small." Garrett's heart sank. "You are thinking of leaving?" "I was," she said, looking down at their joined hands. "But then I thought about you. About how when I was under that tree, dying and alone, I believed someone good would come. And you did. You came, Garrett, and I do not think that was an accident." "Neither do I," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I barely know you," she continued. "And you barely know me. But I feel like I have known you much longer. Like my soul recognized yours the moment you rode up to that tree. Does that sound foolish?" "No," he said, squeezing her hand gently. "It sounds like what I have been feeling since yesterday and did not know how to put into words." She looked up at him, and he saw his own feelings reflected in her eyes. Wonder and fear and hope all mixed together. "So what do we do?" "I got a job," he said. "Starting next week at a ranch north of here. It is steady work with decent pay. I will have a place to stay, room to grow. It is not much, but it is a start, a foundation to build on." "That is wonderful," she said, smiling even as her eyes showed disappointment. She thought he was telling her he would be leaving, moving on. "Zelda," he said, turning to face her fully, still holding her hand. "I know this is fast. I know we have only known each other 2 days, but I cannot stop thinking about you. About your courage, your strength, the way you make me want to be a better man. I do not want to say goodbye to you. I do not want to ride away and spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been." Her breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I am saying I would like to court you proper. I would like to see if this feeling between us is real, if it can grow into something lasting. I am saying that for the first time in my life, I want to stay in one place, and that place is wherever you are." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she was smiling. "I would like that. I would like that very much." He wanted to kiss her right then, but it was too soon, too public. Instead, he lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles, a promise of more to come. "There is a lot we still need to learn about each other," he said. "A lot of time we need to spend getting to know each other properly. But I think we have something special here, Zelda. Something worth fighting for." "So do I," she whispered. Over the next week, Garrett and Zelda were inseparable. He would visit her every morning at the boarding house, and they would walk through town or sit in Mrs. Patterson's garden, talking for hours. He learned that she loved reading but had not owned a book in 2 years. He learned that she had a quick wit and a sharp mind, that she could calculate numbers faster than he could, and had opinions on everything from politics to religion to the best way to make bread. She learned that beneath his rough exterior, he was gentle and thoughtful. She learned that he had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard and made her laugh. She learned that he was honest to a fault, that his word was his bond, and that when he cared about something, he cared with his whole heart. Mrs. Patterson watched their courtship with approval, occasionally chaperoning their walks when propriety demanded it. Even Sheriff Morrison seemed pleased, nodding at them when he saw them together in town. Walter Thompson, however, remained skeptical. He made pointed comments about hasty decisions and men who took advantage of vulnerable women. Garrett ignored him as much as possible, but the store owner's persistent disapproval grated on him. The Sunday before Garrett was set to start his new job, he and Zelda attended church together. It was a small service in a simple building, but the preacher was kind, and the congregation was welcoming. Afterward, several women approached Zelda, inviting her to a quilting circle and offering friendship. Garrett watched as she engaged with them, seeing how she blossomed under the attention and kindness. This was what she needed, he realized. Community, stability, a place to belong. And he wanted to be the one to give that to her, to build that life with her. That evening they walked to the edge of town and sat on a large rock, watching the stars come out. The desert night was cool and clear, and the sky seemed endless. "My mother used to say that stars were the souls of good people watching over us," Zelda said softly. "I stopped believing that after she died. But lately, I have been thinking maybe she was right. Maybe that is how I survived out there. Someone was watching over me, making sure I lasted long enough for you to find me." Garrett put his arm around her shoulders, a gesture that had become natural over the past week. She leaned into him, and he marveled at how perfectly she fit against his side. "I am going to work hard at this ranch job," he said. "I am going to save every penny I can. And when I have enough, I am going to buy some land of my own, build a house, start a small herd, make something that will last." "That sounds like a good dream," she said. "I want it to be our dream," he said, his heart pounding. "Yours and mine together." She pulled back to look at him, her eyes searching his face in the starlight. "Garrett Walker, are you saying what I think you are saying?" "I am saying that I love you, Zelda Armstrong. I know it is fast. I know people will say we are crazy, but I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you, and I want to marry you. I want to build that life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep holding you every night. I want to grow old with you and make you happy and give you the life you deserve." Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling wider than he had ever seen. "I love you too. I have loved you since that first moment under the tree, I think. I just did not have the courage to admit it to myself. Yes, Garrett. Yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, a gentle press of lips that held all the promise of their future. It was sweet and tender and perfect, and when they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "We should probably tell Mrs. Patterson," Zelda said with a laugh. "She is going to have opinions about the proper timeline for these things. Let her have opinions. As long as they do not change how you feel about me, I do not care what anyone thinks." They walked back to the boarding house hand in hand, both of them floating on a cloud of joy and disbelief that life could turn around so completely in such a short time. Mrs. Patterson, as predicted, had opinions. She thought they should wait at least 6 months before marrying, to make sure their feelings were genuine and lasting. But she said it with a twinkle in her eye that suggested she did not really believe they would follow her advice. Sheriff Morrison, when they told him the next day, just laughed and clapped Garrett on the back. "I knew it the moment I saw you two together. You got that look about you, like you had found something you had been searching for without knowing you were searching." Even Walter Thompson seemed to soften a bit when he heard the news, though he still muttered something about young people rushing into things. The preacher agreed to marry them in 4 weeks, time enough for Garrett to prove himself at his new job and for Zelda to have a proper wedding dress made. Mrs. Patterson insisted on that, and several of the church women volunteered to help with the sewing. Garrett started his job at the Winters Ranch and threw himself into the work with a dedication that impressed his employer. He was up before dawn and worked until dark, learning the land and the cattle, proving he was worth the trust George Winters had placed in him. Every penny he earned beyond what he needed for basic expenses went into a tin box he kept under his bunk, savings toward their future. On Sundays, his one day off, he would ride into Las Vegas and spend every possible moment with Zelda. They would attend church together, then spend the afternoon walking or sitting in the plaza, planning their future. She told him her dreams of having a garden and maybe some chickens. He told her about wanting to breed horses eventually, something he had always been good at but never had the resources to pursue. The weeks flew by, and before either of them was quite ready, their wedding day arrived. It was a crisp morning in late October, the kind of day where the desert air was cool and clear and perfect. The church was full of townspeople, more than Garrett had expected given that they were both relative strangers to most of them. But Las Vegas was a small town, and a wedding was cause for celebration. Zelda walked down the short aisle on Sheriff Morrison's arm, since she had no family to give her away. The dress the church women had made was simple but beautiful, white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs. Her hair was down, falling in dark waves around her shoulders, and she carried a small bouquet of wildflowers that Mrs. Patterson had gathered that morning. Garrett stood at the front of the church in his best shirt and pants, his hair combed back, his boots polished. But none of that mattered when he saw Zelda. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, and the smile on her face as she walked toward him made his heart feel too big for his chest. The ceremony was simple and traditional. They spoke their vows in steady voices, meaning every word. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Garrett kissed his bride with a tenderness that made several women in the congregation sigh. The town had organized a small reception in the church hall, with food and music and dancing. Garrett had never been much of a dancer, but he held Zelda in his arms and swayed to the fiddle music, and nothing had ever felt more right. "Happy?" he asked her, looking down into her glowing face. "Happier than I have ever been," she said. "Happier than I thought possible when I was sitting under that tree. I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you stay that way," he promised. They spent their wedding night in a room at the boarding house that Mrs. Patterson had decorated with candles and flowers. It was their first time being truly alone together, and there was a beautiful shyness to it despite the passion that had been building between them for weeks. Garrett was gentle and patient, and Zelda was brave and trusting, and what they shared that night was more than physical. It was the joining of two souls that had been searching for each other without knowing it. The next morning, they began their life together in earnest. George Winters had offered them a small cabin on the ranch property, a gesture of generosity that had touched them both deeply. It was not much, just 2 rooms with a fireplace and a view of the mountains, but it was theirs. Zelda threw herself into making it a home. She scrubbed and cleaned and organized, sewed curtains from fabric she bought with her own money, earned from taking and mending from the ranch hands. Garrett built her shelves for the few books he had managed to buy her, and a table where they could eat their meals together. Life fell into a comfortable rhythm. Garrett worked hard at the ranch, and his dedication and skill did not go unnoticed. Within 3 months, George Winters made him foreman, a position that came with more responsibility but also more pay. Zelda kept their home and started a garden, coaxing vegetables from the stubborn desert soil. In the evenings, they would sit together by the fire, talking about their day or reading aloud or simply enjoying the comfortable silence of two people who did not need words to communicate. The first winter of their marriage was hard in some ways. Money was tight, and the work was demanding. But they were happy, truly happy, in a way that had nothing to do with material comfort and everything to do with love. Zelda made friends among the ranch wives, women who taught her the practical skills of frontier life that her city upbringing had not included. She learned to make soap and preserve food and shoot a rifle, though she never quite got comfortable with that last one. The women welcomed her warmly, and for the first time since her parents died, Zelda felt like she belonged somewhere. By spring, they had saved enough money to start seriously looking at land. There was a property about 5 miles from the Winters Ranch, 160 acres with a creek running through it and good grass for cattle. The previous owner had died, and his widow was selling it for a price that was almost affordable. Garrett and Zelda walked the property together one Sunday afternoon, imagining where they would build their house, where the barn would go, where Zelda's garden would be. It felt real and possible and terrifying all at once. "Can we really do this?" Zelda asked, standing on a small rise overlooking the creek. "I think we can," Garrett said. "It will take time, years maybe, but we can do it together." She took his hand and placed it on her stomach, her eyes meeting his with a mixture of joy and nervousness. "We might need to do it a little faster than we thought. We are going to have a baby." Garrett stared at her, the words taking a moment to sink in. Then a huge grin spread across his face, and he swept her up in his arms, spinning her around as she laughed. "A baby, we are going to have a baby, in about 6 months if my calculations are right." He set her down gently, suddenly worried he had been too rough. "Are you all right? Do you feel sick? Should you be walking this much?" "I am fine," she assured him, laughing at his concern. "Women have babies all the time, Garrett. I am not made of glass." But from that moment on, he treated her like she was made of the finest porcelain. He insisted she rest more, do less heavy work. She humored him because she could see how much it meant to him, this baby they had created together. George Winters, when they told him the news, made them an offer that left them speechless. He would lend them the money for the land, to be paid back over 10 years with minimal interest. It was an act of faith in them, in their work ethic and integrity, and they accepted with gratitude and determination not to let him down. They bought the land and began the slow process of making it theirs. Every spare moment Garrett had was spent on their property, clearing brush, planning the house, building fence. Other ranch hands volunteered their time to help, men who had become friends, who wanted to see the young couple succeed. By the time their baby was due to arrive, they had a small house built, just 3 rooms but solid and weatherproof. Zelda nested there, preparing for the baby with a mixture of excitement and terror. Her friendship with the ranch wives deepened as they shared their own stories of childbirth and motherhood, giving her advice and reassurance. The baby came on a hot August night, a long and difficult labor that frightened Garrett more than anything he had ever experienced. He paced outside the bedroom where the midwife and several ranch wives attended to Zelda, listening to her cries and feeling utterly helpless. When the baby finally arrived, a strong, healthy boy with a loud voice and dark hair, Garrett wept with relief. They named him George after George Winters and Thomas, after Zelda's father. Little George Thomas Walker was perfect, and his parents fell completely in love with him. Fatherhood changed Garrett in ways he had not expected. He had always been a hard worker, but now he worked with a new purpose. Everything he did was for his family, to give them security and a good life. He was up before dawn and often worked by lantern light after dark, building their ranch one day at a time. Zelda amazed him with her strength. She cared for baby George while still managing their household and helping with the ranch work when she could. She never complained, never regretted the hard life they had chosen. And every night, no matter how tired they were, they would lie in bed together and marvel at what they had built. When George was 6 months old, Garrett managed to buy their first cattle, just 10 head, but it was a start. They branded them with a brand he had designed, a G and Z intertwined, representing their partnership. Those 10 cattle grew to 20, then 50, then 100. It took years of hard work and careful management and some luck with the weather and markets. But slowly, steadily, their ranch grew. Zelda got her chickens and expanded her garden until it was large enough to supply not just their family but several others in the area. She started selling eggs and vegetables in Las Vegas, bringing in money that went straight into savings or back into the ranch. They had 2 more children over the next 6 years, a daughter they named Sarah Jane, and another son they called William. The house expanded with the family, rooms added as they could afford them. It was never fancy, but it was full of love and laughter and the good kind of chaos that comes with children. George Winters remained a mentor and friend, watching their success with pride. He told anyone who would listen that Garrett was the best investment he had ever made, that lending them the money for the land had been repaid tenfold in the quality of work Garrett continued to do for the ranch. Walter Thompson, who had been so skeptical at the beginning, eventually came around. He admitted to Garrett one day that he had been wrong, that clearly they had built something real and lasting. Garrett accepted the apology graciously, bearing no grudge. Las Vegas grew and changed over the years, becoming less rough and more established. The railroad came through, bringing new opportunities and new people. But Garrett and Zelda's life remained centered on their ranch and their family, the quiet satisfaction of work well done and love well tended. On their 10th anniversary, Garrett took Zelda back to the cottonwood tree where he had found her. It was still there, still providing shade in the desert, though it looked smaller somehow than it had in memory. They sat beneath it, holding hands, and remembered. "You ever regret it?" Garrett asked. "The hard life, the work, everything you gave up." Zelda looked at him like he was crazy. "Gave up? Garrett, I gave up nothing. I gained everything. A husband I love, children who make me proud, a home and a life that is mine, that we built together. How could I regret any of it?" "I just want to make sure you are happy," he said. "That has always been my goal from the very first day." "I am happy," she said firmly. "I am exactly where I am supposed to be, with exactly who I am supposed to be with. I knew that the day you rode up to this tree. I knew someone good would come, and you did. You came, and you gave me everything." He kissed her then, a kiss that held 10 years of marriage, of partnership, of love that had deepened and matured but never faded. When they pulled apart, both of them had tears in their eyes. "Let us go home," Zelda said. "Our children will be wondering where we are." They rode back to their ranch together, his arm around her waist as they shared his horse like they had that first day. The house came into view, smoke rising from the chimney, and they could see George playing in the yard with his siblings. It was a beautiful sight, a life beyond what either of them had dared to dream. The years continued to pass, bringing both joy and sorrow as all years do. They lost George Winters to age, mourning him deeply but grateful for all he had done for them. They paid off the land loan early and continued to expand their holdings, buying adjoining property as it became available. Their cattle operation became one of the most respected in the region, known for quality stock and honest dealing. Their children grew into fine adults. George Thomas became a rancher like his father, taking over more of the operation as Garrett's hair turned gray. Sarah Jane married a local schoolteacher and gave Garrett and Zelda their first grandchildren. William decided he wanted to be a lawyer and went east to study, a choice that worried his parents, but that they supported because they had always encouraged their children to follow their dreams. Garrett and Zelda grew old together, their faces weathered by sun and wind, their hands rough from work, but their love for each other only growing stronger. They had built something that would last beyond their lifetimes, a legacy not just of land and cattle but of family and love and integrity. On a cool evening in October, 35 years after the day Garrett had found Zelda under that cottonwood tree, they sat together on the porch of their house, watching the sunset paint the desert in shades of gold and red. They were in their 50s now, still healthy and active but feeling their age in ways they had not when they were young. "You remember that first sunset?" Garrett asked, his hand finding hers automatically. "The one we watched from the plaza in Las Vegas, the day I told you I was finding a reason to stop drifting." "I remember every sunset," Zelda said softly, "but especially that one. That was the day I knew for certain that my life was going to be all right, that I was going to be all right." "I am so grateful that hawk flew west that morning," Garrett said. "So grateful I found you. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Zelda. You and the life we built." "We were lucky," she agreed. "But it was not just luck. We worked for this, we fought for it. We chose each other every day, even on the hard days." He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it, a gesture he had repeated thousands of times over their marriage, but that never lost its meaning. "I would choose you every day for 1,000 lifetimes." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to emerge. Somewhere in the house behind them, they could hear their granddaughter laughing, the sound like music. Their son George was staying for dinner with his family, and the house was full in the way they loved best. "I never told you," Zelda said quietly, "about the moment before you rode up to that tree. I was so tired, so ready to give up. And I closed my eyes and made a promise to God or the universe or whoever might be listening. I promised that if someone came, if someone saved me, I would never take a single day for granted. I would live every moment fully and love with my whole heart." "You have kept that promise," Garrett said. "So have you," she replied. "Every day you have kept the promise you made to me in that church, to love me, honor me, cherish me. You have given me a beautiful life, Garrett Walker." "We gave each other a beautiful life," he corrected. "Together, always together." As the last light faded from the sky and the desert night wrapped around them, they remained on the porch, two people who had found each other against all odds and built something extraordinary from almost nothing. They had started with hope and faith and love, and they had created a legacy that would endure for generations. The little girl from California who had run into the desert rather than surrender her freedom, and the drifting cowboy who had followed a hawk's flight west, had found in each other everything they had ever needed. They had proved that sometimes the most important moments in life come when we are at our lowest, when we dare to believe that someone good will come. And sometimes, if we are very lucky, someone good does come. Someone who sees us, truly sees us, and chooses to stay. Someone who turns a moment of rescue into a lifetime of love. Someone who makes every sunset more beautiful and every day worth living. Garrett and Zelda had found that in each other, and they had never let it go. As they sat together on their porch, surrounded by the family and life they had built, they knew they had been blessed beyond measure. Not with an easy life, but with a meaningful one. Not with wealth, but with richness of spirit. Not with perfection, but with something far more valuable, a love that had weathered every storm and emerged stronger. The cottonwood tree still stood in the desert, a silent witness to where their story began. And in the house on the ranch they had built together, their story continued, a testament to courage, faith, and the transformative power of love. It was a story that would be told to their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, passed down through generations as a reminder that even in the hardest moments, hope matters. That believing someone good will come can make all the difference. And that when two people find each other and commit to building a life together, they can create something beautiful that lasts forever.